Hi, everyone. So excited to be here, especially with one of my special guests, Jason Gerardo. You might know him from the every other Wednesdays that he's been participating with Dave Snell, and also, just really working with other people in our group, Kelly Steinecke, for one, who may be here today but was running late because of a dental appointment. And Dave may drop in too. So stay tuned. The program may get expanded as we go. With that said, chat's very open. We depend on chat to be as relevant and to address any of your comments or questions or concerns or opportunities. So feel free to take advantage of chat. With that said, I'll turn it over to Jason for a quick update. And the word of the day is support. And I know that has so much to do with about everything everybody does. So, Jason, say hello to our wonderful audience.
Good morning, Donna. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, I'm really glad I could be here today. I wasn't scheduled, but came in here today. As we've talked about earlier, my internet's having a little bit of challenge today, so we shall see how that goes. I do appreciate everyone's flexibility in that, and it might be at some points the Dawn Show, as it is the Dawn Show, but you might be by yourself as it goes in and out. Hopefully, it all smooths out because that's kind of how life goes, right? You get some choppy waters and then things smooth out and it all works out.
Well, yeah, for sure. And, that's part of going live is experiencing everything on every side of the coin here as to what live streaming is. And, it's the best of all worlds as far as being able to have audio and video. So how is, and here we have Omar as our first commenter. Omar's just a great individual. He promotes his show, Zoom Party. Actually, I'm helping him prepare some questions for one of his next coming shows. So it's really been fun to see how the community not only uh, shares in the audience and in the response to it, but continues to collaborate outside of it. And, I've learned over time it's better to do more with less people than less with more people and really get a little deeper and richer. With that said, Dennis is here. I kind of missed Dennis yesterday, but must have had something really important because he's here almost every day. Dennis is a great colleague here in Colorado, 49 years in the same heating and air conditioning business. I got to give you credit for stick with itness. And here we have Terrence. Haven't seen Terrence in a while. Terrence, another great guy that got to know over a few years on LinkedIn, does some really fantastic things. And I would suggest that this is a great opportunity now and through the show to reach out, expand your network, especially if you're aligned and related to some people in their interest. So really, and I think that's the key is how many quality takeaways can someone receive, but also how many take a gives, I guess you might say, who can they promote and offer to everybody else. So off to a great start, Jason. How do you bring support into your programs with people? Well, with that said, I'll answer that question. Uh, uh, Jason, uh, I find to be one of the most supportive, collaborative individuals on LinkedIn. And now that you're visible, Jason, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, this is going to be challenging, but that's life, and that is like you talked about, that is going live, and it's amazing to see your community show up and they come and they support, in all so many different ways, and they've supported me. That's one of the things of the growth of my business. No direct clients, but that's just part of the puzzle. But I've Kelly introduced me to Jason Wilson, and I'm going to be doing something with them, and Leslie had me on her show, and just so many great connections, and meeting you and Dave. This is just a wonderful venue to be able to meet so many great people and get introduced to. And it's almost like it's almost a vetting process. You know, people that show up and consistently show up are the folks that you're going to want to work with, because those are the people that, you know, they have passion for what they're doing and they care. So this LinkedIn Live is a great format for that, is kind of to get to know everyone and kind of, as they used to say, do the dance as you go along, and you go forward with these people, and you build these solid relationships, not just relationships based on, well, maybe I can get something from them or they can get something from me. Not saying anyone in this group would ever say that or feel that, but we all know those people do show up on LinkedIn. So, and everywhere, of course. But here, this group is very much about the giving and about showing up for each other. So that's something that I love about this community.
Well, it makes me want to keep coming back and having another show, because I learned so much from every guest. I learned so much from the audience, and everybody can get better together. And I think that's part of support, is it's a two-way street. You know, there's some give and take. What someone may need, you may have more than enough of, and what you're a little bit deficient in, you can fill in the gaps with someone else. And it's also good practice for communication skills,
Right.
you know, for getting over inhibitions about, I know a lot of people initially, when I say going live, they feel everybody's going to see every blemish, every challenge. But most people get over it pretty quickly, and they find the water's fine. They jump in, and it really expands their horizon, because when you can overcome one challenge, gives you confidence to meet the next challenge face on. And other people are just like you doing what you're doing. And, you know, I think the key is when you know you're part of a community that is understanding, that is empathetic and thoughtful, it's a safer place to be and a safer place to really build success on. We've got Mary White here, who is a new name to me. Happy to have you. Obviously, Mary knows Terrence, so that's great. And, you know, there's circles within circles that people can start creating. And, you know, my group may not be exactly the same as someone else's group, but someone else's direction, intentions, purpose is probably different. Timing has a lot to do with it. But, you know, LinkedIn rewards larger communities. More connections kind of help you in different ways. Again, I'd like to caution everybody that connections need to be relevant, because numbers for numbers' sakes just give you a lot more dilution, bigger feeds that may not be as interesting but time consuming. Dennis comes back with, agree, we want to meet up with people who show up and not off. That's such an important comment, because what I found over time is finding humility, being humble, meeting people where they're at is far more inviting than blowing your own smoke and patting yourself on the back, because that only shows insecurity,
Right.
you know, trying to overcompensate. And it really doesn't take other people's feelings into consideration. Is people are here for a purpose, here for a reason. Everybody has more things to do than time. And how you choose to invest your time will really have a big impact on the future. And, you know, I think in this ever-changing dynamic world, especially with social media, you always have to take time to reflect. Things that you're doing now may have initiated at a different time, place, and situation in your life, and it may not be as pertinent as it might have been early on. And you know, change is something that most people should really enjoy and look forward to, especially with a positive attitude and with some optimism. And I think support goes a long way to helping someone persevere, make it through the next day, not give up. Because, you know, when you really think about giving up, what are you giving up to? The world's still going to be the same. Whatever you were dealing with is still going to be there if you haven't dealt with it. So with that said, how have you found a way of getting to people in an opportunity to help support them and see their appreciation for the support you bring?
Yeah, it's about showing up. You know, I think it was Dennis had mentioned that, it's about showing up and being there, and being there for people, and not showing up with your hat in your hand, or with your hands out, or your hat in your hand either, knowing that it's a collaboration, that you're both bringing something to the table. And I come from a place of service. That's my business. That's my life. That's my values, is I always want to give back. And so as I post, it's about being of service. As I share, as people comment on posts, or I go to their posts and comment, it's about wanting to engage and wanting to be a part of something bigger, and wanting to share whatever I have, I can share with people. Because when you share, I don't have any less. I don't diminish anything about me or from me by giving to others. I actually grow. And so that's my mindset. So I always try to just give, and just try to be there and show up for people, without receiving in mind. That shows up if it shows up. That's the reality of it, is that, but I say it on every show, but if you want to have a friend, you be a friend. And that's kind of the same scenario. Is, I think, if we want to have that reciprocal process, we show up. And so that's what I try to do. And sometimes it doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes I can't get to everybody. Sometimes I can't, because you have to also do what you're trying to do. You said we all have a finite amount of time during our day, more than enough things to do. Like today, I was able to show up. This wasn't scheduled, but I was able to show up. And I really, because you've given so much, I was like, no, let me make sure I can make this work, if I can make it work. And it was able to some things moved around and shifted on their own, and I was able to show up. And that's like, I feel, because you've given so much, I was like, I really want to show up. I really want to make this work. And I think that's what the key is when you feel it, you want to give it.
Yeah, that's an excellent way of communicating that. And, it's also about listening and hearing what people have to say. And that's where you can support people the most in the beginning, is, again, showing a kind ear, a little bit of empathy, getting some understanding. No one likes to be assumed. Nobody likes to be judged. People want to be heard for where they are, and how much more you hear will depend on how well you listen, and then how well you address the issue, versus just coming out with, here's what you need to do, or here's what I did, and if it worked for me, it could work for you. And, it saves you, just like on Wheel of Fortune, the ability to buy vowels before you have to solve the puzzle. Is, now that I know some context, now that I know your situation or position, I can understand where you are. And too many people look at the superficial, the, just surface type of elements, and make fast judgments. And that's not necessary when you can have a conversation. When you're just looking at somebody's profile, pretty soon you'll look at the picture, you'll look at their summary, you'll look at, what they're saying about themselves, and all that's well and good. But is it authentic? Does it really come through over time? Because there's a saying, time will either expose you or promote you. And live streaming kind of gives you the whole ball of wax, that you can see how people respond to other people. You see how people address questions, and, they're really showing you what they could be with you in advance of having to make that decision. Too many people have to say, well, I'm looking for the best doctor. Well, sometimes they just go to Google, put in doctors in Colorado, and you'll get a whole list. But how many conversations can you have? How much insight can you gain? And I think that lends itself to being a little bit more prepared, really taking some time to do some due diligence. Everybody that comes on the show, I look at their profile, I look at their whole profile, I look at their work experience. And also, people like to do business with people who are like-minded. I had a conversation this week that was from Michigan, and I'm originally from Michigan. So just being co-Michiganders, you can talk about the Michigan Wolverines or Michigan State or restaurants that you used to go to. And it brings you closer because it's more personalized now and it's more relatable. And I think that's so important. Omar says, thank you, Don, for giving me the next game show idea, Wheel of Zoom. And, I think a sense of humor, and Omar's really great at presenting that, puts people at ease. Laughter and fun makes a big difference when people are too caught up in being too serious, feeling like this is it, it's all or nothing. And, tomorrow's going to come whether you're ready for it or not. Whatever you solved today or didn't, we'll have another day of opportunity tomorrow. And I think the belief, they say faith is the belief in the invisible.
Right.
When you believe in something you can't yet see, feel, or touch, but it's possible. And hope springs eternal, and I think that's the key to driving people to higher levels is their desire to have hope. But also, hope by itself and all these wonderful things we're talking about mean nothing without hard work.
Right.
I've never met someone who became really successful over time. There's always a flash in the pan. Lottery winners are exactly that. Didn't do anything special to earn $1 billion except put a couple bucks down, but it's something they can't replicate tomorrow. And in a lot of cases, I was actually listening to a book today on Audible, and it was The Algebra of Success, or The Algebra of Financial Success. And they actually did a survey of all these major lottery winners. And they compared it against a survey of all these individuals who were quadriplegic. And they found the quadriplegic people over time had a better view of life than the lottery ticket winners. And it's because they had to work with what they had day by day instead of getting overwhelmed by $400 million.
Right.
And they don't have a clue as to how to handle money or what $400 million really means. So, no one's in a better position than you if you really don't know what they're dealing with, how happy they are with their supposed success. And the other element of the book, which impressed me, was things never make people happy. Even luxury items become entitlement items. Right? I mean, somebody was saying in the book, well, I saw this boat and I thought it'd be a great boat, and it actually was owned by one of the founders of Google. And then before they knew it, Steve Jobs' boat that he built and never actually got the sale was even bigger and better. So you wonder if the person who had that really great boat then looks at the bigger boat, and then it happens, well, I need one of those too. And in essence, you're really competing against yourself instead of supporting yourself. So, Jason, what's your thoughts on perspective and how important it is?
Yeah, you cut off. I apologize. Once again, I'm having my internet struggles, but you made some really great points and talking about that, about, the purpose of things is, we're trying to find happiness, and you go after these things and they show up, and then you're like, oh, okay, now I need something else. And now I need something else, where they say that happiness isn't the destination, happiness is the journey, to where you happy every day, and that's what shows up. And the other thing I want to talk about, as you mentioned, my favorite quote is the universe has to find you working. You can have all this manifestations, and you could have all these goals and all these dreams, and you put it out there, and but you have to do the work, like you said. You have to, and whatever that means, whatever that is for you, it's not necessarily picking up a shovel. I've dug ditches in my life. I've cleaned bathrooms in my life. That's not my most economic viable situation, but I've done it, and I know the work, and I've learned the lessons from that. But you have to take action. And at that moment in my life, that's the action I could take. I needed to make money. I needed to do something. I put my energy into something and I made work. Now, is that mental energy later on? Is that, there's other ways to create things other than doing physical work, but you have to take action and not just sit around waiting for it to happen. I've been blessed that I've been able to live around the United States and meet a lot of people. And my Southern friends say, you don't get lucky sitting in the shade,
Mhm.
and you have to get out there and you have to make something happen. And you were saying something earlier about the lottery winners, and that's, I think that'd be a great thing for all of us. We could take that and do a lot of good things with it if we're making action. But, Gandhi has the 7 social sins, and one is wealth without work, basically, to paraphrase, so to actually appreciate things, you have to work for it. If things are given to you, that's why you see, I think, and this is an opinion and might be going a little bit off, but people that are insanely wealthy, that it comes to them, been given to them, or a lot of fame shows up in our world nowadays for people that are kind of a flash in the pan, but they make a lot of money while they do it. But you see those people doing some very, we'll call it interesting things, because they get bored, because it just shows up. They're just like, what do I do with $100 million? And they start, they don't know how to respond, and they act in ways that may not be the most conducive to them living their best lives, let's say. And so that's something on a big scale about what we can do, is put in the work, put in the effort, and really enjoy the rewards. I think that's something that's very important about that.
Yeah, and I think the longer the climb, somewhat the harder the climb, the more gratitude and appreciation you have for reaching that summit. And when somebody is, given things, they get entitled, they get lazy, because that other saying, if it's going to be, it's up to me. At the end of the day, when you measure whatever success or happiness you derive from that day, what did you do for it? What could have you done towards it to make yourself more successful and to help others? And it's also your character, your principles, your North Star. I remember during our business, me and my wife started the business for the first 8 years before we started having kids. And I'd ask her, well, what would you do if we came into a lot of money? And she said, I just give nicer gifts. and I thought, hey, isn't that cool? Because it wasn't like, oh, I want to get this piece of jewelry, or I want to get that. It's, I want to continue with the people I have, but make their life a little bit better.
Right.
And I've also run across people who made fabulous amounts of money. And the question is, why do you keep doing this? And at a certain point, they would say, well, I don't need to do it for me, but they created foundations or charitable opportunities. And they say, I'm working for the people that I'm supporting, is they need me to continue to fundraise. They need me to continue to support. And that gives you more meaning if you're helping a bunch of hungry kids or abused women, or whatever the situation is. It gives you purpose, and without purpose, every day is Sunday. And that gets pretty boring because you got too much time on your hands.
Right.
And when you have too much time on your hands and too much money in your hands, they all can find a direction that really is not, or didn't start out being you, but you become a lesser person over time by not bringing value to others. And at the end of the day, all you have is who you have. They say your network is your net worth. And the time to know and get to know people is while you're working on things, because they can be a support mechanism for you, a sounding board. Dennis comes back with saying, have a little mouse issue here. Here we go. Throw away this pad for now. Agree, having hope brings you up, and staying afloat when following it also helps keep you from slipping down the slope and being a dope. And, isn't that the truth? Because so many people are so obviously inauthentic
Right.
that once they show up, everybody knows they're almost a fool, for presuming that they can get away with throwing their weight around, name dropping, talking about everything they have. And it's like, who's really listening except for the person who's talking? And then how does that affect somebody else? I mean, people showing off don't always show up. And it's the people, like Jason said, who do show up, who are there, that you remember. Because it's when people do things that they don't have to do, when they take, go the extra mile, and some people never go the first mile. And it's little things done right over time that compound. It's simple disciplines, and it's really organization and goal setting, but also time setting. Is, if you have a list, you're always going to be in a better position than if you don't, and most people, they write down what they need to do the next day before they leave their work. And they can look at it, and at least when they wake up, they can adjust it or modify it. But it's like, it's so nice to be checking things off, even if they're simple things. If you're a little remiss and it's time to clean something up or organize something, that goes a long way to saying, at least I did these 3 things today, which gives me more time and space for the next 3 things. But how many people, and that's where maybe cluttering comes in, and it clutters and not just physical things, but, I should have made that call today. I should have got back to that person. And, once you fall behind, again, it's the opposite momentum is that it continues to, let's say, put you backwards. And here's our good friend Harvey. Harvey is in our collaboration group. Actually, we're going to meet at an hour after the show is over. I can't say enough about Harvey. He exemplifies so much of the good we're talking about because he puts it in action. Got a full-time position, has the franchise show Tuesdays that follow this show, but also launched his Thursday show, which is about franchise companies branding, doing really well. Me and Harvey are collaborators and working on some really special things. So, one person's success not only should be applauded, but joined, right? Because the better they do, the better they're going to want to do, the bigger the space they're going to occupy. And then ultimately, they're going to remember you and say, hey, here's an opportunity. Let's do something together. And in today's world, everything is kind of fractional. Let's do a project. Here's a goal. When we finish it, let's make a decision on how we maybe go forward, how we might take a pause. But yeah, Harvey's an inspiration to me and should be to others. I'm learning so much as we're going. And, it's nice to teach each other and make room for each other because, you meet the same people on the way down as you meet on the way up. And I always said I learned so much more on the way down than I learned on the way up because you take it more personally. You forget what gratitude means and also what's most important to you in life. And sometimes you got to almost lose everything to gain everything. It's almost like wiping the slate clean. And sometimes you get asked to leave before you'd want to, but it probably gives you a better situation to readjust and redirect your time and effort to. Dennis comes back with, agree, go down the extra mile and you'll earn an extra smile. Well, again, people remember the little things, the kindness that you show, the thoughtfulness, the courtesy, and all these values and attributes are in short supply. Today, it's all a lot of not being civil, not being respectful, demonstrating loudness and intimidating. And there's a vacuum that's been created for the people who can fill it with good values and good applications. And here's Christine. Christine, I can't talk enough about. Actually, she shared with everybody the other day that May 4th, she's getting her MBA that she worked so hard for over the last year or so. She also is a wonderful mother and homemaker, but also a career individual, has a great corporate position. So just be able to juggle a family, expand your education, expand your career, and still find time to support others is huge. And also, shows like this who recognize Harvey and Dennis and Christine and everybody else validates what they're doing. And I think that's important because who wants to have a celebration that no one shows up to? Who wants to have a graduation where nobody came to, or no one shared congratulations to you? So, a lot of times what's good for you is good for people like you. And what turns you on, you can help turn other people on because it's their turn in the spotlight. And no one stays in the spotlight forever. Whenever I watch, award shows, and they could be sports awards, they could be movie awards, all these people work so hard all their life. Some people started at 5, 6 years old in acting or in baseball. And it took so many years of practice and dedication and people and their family driving them to the games and making sure they had the proper equipment and everything else. And at a certain point, there's an obligation for the people who came before you and you're standing on their shoulders, who opened doors, that you want to show them they made a smart investment in you. So Jason, a lot of people here today, a lot of great conversation.
It's amazing. And I do want to say one thing. I want to back up track to what you were saying about talking about on the way down, on the way up, what you learn. And I think it's important to have humility before you get humbled. And I think that's the key. Like when you're going down, you get humbled really fast, and or you just keep going down, and having that humility at all times and knowing that, you can't do it all yourself. I think that's very important. And as you share with everybody else, and finding that out, something that's, and I kind of just want to jump back for a second on the conversation. I was thinking about Shaquille O'Neal, richer than all get out, owns so many businesses, a really smart businessman. And, he tells a story about talking with his kids, where his kids are talking about being rich. And he's like, wait a minute, we're not rich. I'm rich. I have money. We don't have money. And he makes his kids work for it. He's like, you want that money? Bring me some A's. You want money? Bring me some A's. You want you're going to give me a degree. You give me a degree and we'll talk some money, And so I think that work ethic that he instills in his kids, instead of his kids can easily just do whatever they want. He's got enough money for several generations, but he has that mindset that he came up with of working hard, having dedication, grinding it out, because he didn't have the easiest career either in his basketball career. So he appreciates hard work and grind. So he's instilling that in his kids. And I think, you're talking about it, but the word in NLP we talk about is modeling, so he sets that model up for his kids to see this great, how to act and how to interact with the world. And sometimes we don't always have that, but things like this, people can share with each other. And I'm learning all the time. I'm open to learning all the time. I don't know enough about anything to be an expert. I'm always open to learning new things. And so where we have this community and people are sharing, I think it's very important to be open and to listen. I get frustrated because I see so many posts about people say, you should do this and you should do that and you should do this. And it's like, well, you don't know my story. You don't know my situation. You don't know where I'm at. So like the biggest part of what I do working one-on-one with clients is ask questions and listen. And I think that's the biggest challenge sometimes, is just for us to listen. And obviously this way, it's you and I kind of in a conversation, but it's beautiful to have this community that you've grown over time, because they're adding to the conversation and they're putting input, and we can learn from them and we can take cues from them. And that makes it a much richer experience. And I think that goes for everything that we do in life.
Yeah, that's so important. And, I did meet Shaq one time by accident. And I had never seen somebody that big, that tall, that wide, that strong. And actually, we were at the craps table in Las Vegas at the Bellagio. And I happened to back up and I bumped into him. And I turned around, all I could see was his legs at my eye level. And I kept looking up. And he just seemed like a great guy. He was playing for $5. He wasn't throwing a lot of money in, had an entourage, was having a good time. But I also saw there was a show on HBO that spotlighted 5 different people, and Shaq was one of them. And he recalled his first contract with the Orlando Magic, got a good amount of money. His dad was in the military, and they traveled all around. And I think he got his first coach in Germany. And anyways, he called his dad up, and he was complaining that, this isn't going right and that's not going right. And his dad said, pick me up right now. And Shaq picked him up and took him to a bad side of town, and happened to see somebody who was homeless sitting on a porch or something. And he said, go up to that person, see what their problems are. And he went up to that person. And before he was done talking to him, he made a call, got the person an apartment, put some money in the bank for him, and also continued to create all this wonderful generosity. He's one of the biggest supporters of the Boys and Girls Club because he was part of it. And Mr. Beast was another person on the show, and what he was able to do. And it was only because once you start seeing what somebody on the street is like, do you appreciate your $3 million contract? Do you not complain about something that people only dream of? And I think that's so important, is put yourself in their shoes. And, by having that balance, by being generous, by being supportive. And, to your early comment, I did that with my kids, is you learn early on, kids would come to you, oh, I want this, I need this, I have to have this, mostly toys when they're young. And I'd always look at it from a practical standpoint. Well, you really don't need that. We really can't afford that. It's not necessary. But then I listen to myself and, yeah, we can afford it. I said, let me just tell you what I just learned. You don't deserve it. We can afford it if you deserve it. If you show me what you have and what you're doing, I would gladly reward you. But just saying I want it and it shows up. And even when it came time to go to school, I made sure they paid half of it, whatever it was. And I could have afforded it, but I made sure they understood this is your education, and if you want it, you need to put some skin in the game. And they both worked after school. They both found the money, and they put them on a nice road of a trajectory that has served them pretty well. Dennis says, agree. When going down, be humble and you won't tumble. Christine comes back with a good one. Sometimes I feel like I wasted time early in life, but at least I'm making up for it now. That's all we can do on the subject of learning. I forgot how much I loved it until I went back to school. I just want to keep going with things I'm interested in. It doesn't have to result in a degree. And, that's a great point, Christine, because sometimes you weren't aware of what you were doing when you were doing it. And as you come back to it and you say, well, this is the kind of student I want to be, and this is how I want to learn. And there's never enough vowels that you can buy. It's always better to be more knowledgeable, more prepared, and which lends itself to confidence. And confidence alone can support people. They say the worst thing in the military is to walk into general's tent and see them crying in their hands, because that's not going to instill a lot of confidence in the troops. And they actually qualified Napoleon as the 10,000 man. And what that says is when he showed up on the battlefield to lead his troops, he was as valuable as 10,000 men, because of what he instilled in everybody around him. And I think, that's what you have to understand, is your projection, especially through social media, gets leveraged and gets amplified. And you never know who's listening to the show, or definitely in the future, who will listen to it that you'll never have a chance to get to know or meet. but you do know you left behind something of value, something you might have paid dearly for that the next person doesn't have to. And that makes some of your challenges worthwhile. If you can feed 5 people with a meal you just earned, it's better than just serving yourself. And it also, to
Right.
Jason's earlier point, well, whether you can reciprocate in the same kind is not as important as acknowledging. Sometimes just a great thank you goes a long way, or I appreciate what you're doing. And how many kind words don't you share every day, with the people around you? How many times aren't you aware of, boy, that's a beautiful dress you have on, or I just love the way you just did something. And most of the people just do it out of routine. They take themselves for granted that, hey, I am a really good cook, or I do have taste in my fashion. And more importantly, I got someone who cares and someone who shares. And you can see so many marriages that are just full of stuff, multiple homes and cars, but no time, no attention. And everybody's on a different wavelength, and those aren't sustainable. And I think what's important to people is not what they grow up with, because Madison Avenue gives you this whole distorted view of success. That book, The Millionaire Next Door, was very eye-opening. And it shared with you that most millionaires never buy a new car. The average is they buy one off of lease, right? Someone had it for 2 years, took a $20,000 depreciation. The car's never been really used. They're not buying $10,000 watches. They're buying simple timepieces, and now that's even dated. And you find that the book today was, the money you save is the money you get to keep, right? It's not what you make, it's what you retain. And they even had a whole thing on how do you retire early. And their formula was, have enough passive income that covers your overhead. So if you got rent or dividends or whatever coming in and it equals what you spend, you don't have to work anymore. Again, depending on position in life, time, and everything else. So, I think it was Ben Franklin says the only way to have money is to make it or save it or both. And most people aren't good at saving because there's a impulse to, I need something now. I don't have enough. Or the last thing I had isn't as exciting as it was. Here's a good comment from Dennis. Agree, we can and should learn with or without a degree and stay free to always learn and earn. Life will keep teaching you, whether you acknowledge the lesson, whether you take it to heart, but you're getting feedback. Some of it you don't even want to see or hear. It's like taking a poll and only seeing the yeses and never seeing the nos. And why not learn? Why not live? Why not share? And I think those are key things that should be in someone's toolbox. Is having balance is so important. So what's your thoughts now on support, since we've kind of gone through almost 2/3 of the show, Jason?
It's so important, and it's just I talk about all the time, community. Community is so key, and supporting each other and being there for each other. You don't know sometimes, and I love your point, Don, about you don't know the effect that your one comment can have on someone's day. I just came up for me the other day. So I'm home. I work from home. I was sharing with you. My wife works from home too. We're in this house pretty much all the time together. But she has a big.
Well, Jason will be back. He knows how to get on and off. And that's the nice thing about being with people and respect, is you get to play back and forth and to interact in a different way. So, Jason, glad to have you right back. I was just filling in some of the voids. So continue with your thought that you had.
So I was saying, how important it is that that to share those little things on a day-to-day basis, and you don't know how the impact that it has on people. And that my wife and I both work from home. We're both really busy. She's super busy. I'm always grinding for my business. I have my own business. You know how that is, of course, Don, in the early times, starting out, really just pushing always. And I was thinking, like, do I thank her enough? Do I say, I tell her I love her all the time, because I do. She's an amazing person. She's my partner. She's my life. But I'm like, do you tell her? Do you show her? Do you show up and just those little things and thank her more for the little stuff that she does, because it does matter. And the same thing with our communities, and our support. Like you said, people do things and we're like, oh, thanks, and I appreciate it, whatever. But do you really take the time to thank them? Do you really take the time to show them? And how does that work for you? Like, I might show one way, you might show another. But the key is, like, in my world, we talk about love strategies. And we all have, how do you know you're loved, is your love strategy. And so many times we use our love strategy to tell the other person, to show the other person we love them, but it might not be their love strategy. As an example, do you have to hear something? Is it a hug, or is it giving you a gift or something? And it's the same thing with support and community. When you truly know how your community knows, like, how does that person going to know that I really, really appreciate them and what they're doing? And then using that form to show them that you really care and really appreciate what they're doing. I think that's so important. And that comes from building relationships, of course. That's like a show like this. We get to know each other more. I can look like a very serious, intimidating guy. I can look very intimidating and stuff, and I get that. It's just the face that God gave me. But I'm a jokester. I love to joke. Humor is one of my top values. And this gives me opportunity to do that, and to show that I like to joke around and have fun. I could be serious, of course. But as you get to know people better, you get to know how they operate, and you can really, truly express your gratitude towards them, because that's what it really is. That's what support comes with, gratitude.
Well, you make some wonderful points, because it took me a long time to learn. Because everything, when it's new, you come in with your preconceived ideas of what it could be or what it should be, and you start acting a role that maybe isn't relevant to who you're with and what you're doing. And other times it just is expected at a certain point. Like, every day, I've done this show 752 times. I looked at my YouTube video inventory, and every morning my wife says, "Good luck, have fun." Every morning. And every morning I say, "Thank you so much for your valuable support," after she says that. Every morning. Right? And it's expected, but it's never taken for granted. Right? Because thank you for, just like when you go off to school and someone, "Have a wonderful day, enjoy yourself." They set the tone for you. Actually, today, my son will be on ESPN. He's playing for the Big Ten championship in lacrosse at Ohio State, and then on to the national tournament. And, I send them, "Have a great game, have a great day," and people have to know that they're good enough just for where they are, just for who they are. Even when my kids went to college, I was like, "Hey, I know how smart you are. Don't knock yourself out for grades. Be there to mature, to learn, to grow, to have some fun." And when you lower the expectation, you lower the temperature and the pressure on people, and I think, that's why people do what they do. Some people are still trying to earn their family's respect and appreciation and belonging. And, I think, those are elements that you look back sometimes at your childhood and say, "Boy, I wish I would have gotten more of that when I was growing up." That
Right.
people said, because there's so much crazy stuff going on today. And so many people are doing self-harm to themselves in so many different ways. And when you tell somebody, "Hey, if you never change, you're just fine by me. If you never do any more, that's good enough for me." Because there's so many people who live in other people's perspective or vision of them. How many times kids come home from school, "I got a B+, well, you should have got an A." And it's like, well, then I might as well get see. Because if I didn't cross over into the promised land, why even try? And then eventually I'm not even going to show it to you anymore. And I learned about communication is how you deal with what someone says will determine how much more they tell you before they do something.
Right.
Some people ask for permission, most people ask for forgiveness. And it's better to get out in front and say, set the bar low, because here's one other funny thing, because there is some psychology to everything. My son went to University of Nevada, Las Vegas, was an academic All-American, was captain of the lacrosse team for the first 3 years. But he liked to gamble, so he'd be betting football games. And at a certain point, I said, let's keep it in the family, because I didn't want him betting with people he didn't know or doing anything. So I said, whatever you want to bet, I'll take the bet. And he actually did pretty good. And I was going to have to give him money anyway, so he earned it in one way. But every time before the games would start I said, I'm really wishing you win every bet. And initially he would say, what are you talking about? We're betting against each other. And I said, Jonathan, no matter what I say, it's not going to change the game anyways. Right? So I can wish you all the best, but the game is going to play the way it is. The score is going to be what it is. But just know that I'm rooting for you, even if I don't benefit from it. And over time, people pick that up and find out that they can still be a good person and still work hard at their trade, still, invest in everything else, and know that it can all disappear tomorrow, and enjoy the moment you're in. And if you're good enough, getting started again is nothing new. Harvey, who just shared, great show, thank you, off to do my show now. And he had Jackson Hewitt on this Tuesday. And I don't know if you know Jackson Hewitt, but just like H&R Block, they have all these tax offices. Right. And this was the original Jackson Hewitt.
Wow.
And, he reached out because Harvey has the franchise show, and it happens to be the show. And Jackson's been in it for 50 years. And he sold his first company, Jackson Hewitt, for $500 million. He had to have a 3-year non-compete. Started his second franchise business, which he had to compete against his own name because his name went with the sale for the first one. And then he sold that business for $500 million. And now he has a business that he's really focused on elder care and pet care franchising, because he sees that as the future. Yeah. And he doesn't stop. I mean, here's a man that has accumulated all this wealth. He's probably late 70s, early 80s, but he still gets on a plane 3 days a week, travels throughout the country, building and supporting. And he doesn't have to do it, but he does want to do it. And find something you're passionate about, something that you do because you don't need the money, but you want to be as successful as you can. But look at how many people he created wealth for. Look at all the shareholders. Look at all the franchisees. That's something to be more proud of than I'm king of the castle. Everything I do is on my own, for me, and that's it. Versus being expansive. And there's no reason why one can't, because you draw the circle of influence that you have. Dennis comes back with, your son should have a great game with his great family name. Well, for sure, and sometimes people exceed expectations, and this could be his first time that he won a national college championship. He won 2 Nevada high school championships he coached in 2 years. He was actually the youngest general manager in Major League Sports, took his team to 12 national games and won 3 of them. and then pivoted to college, and then actually also coaches the Hungarian national team internationally. And it just continues to expand. And he's just the same kid he was when he was a kid, very simple, very economical, very pragmatic. And I think, actually, he did work with me 8 years in my company. And there's something to having someone with you every day in real world doing things with you and going off on their own. Carl's here. Carl's another wonderful example of hard work. Carl does a daily newsletter, just finished his 150th newsletter in a row every day, has his show that precedes this every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern, Instant Riches, which is all about crowdfunding and raising capital. He's also an adjunct professor at University of Denver and Colorado State University. Just fantastic guy who's just into so many things. Also supporting charities, raising funding for them. And it's when you get to know somebody that you really get to know somebody.
Right.
It's not just, are these people authentic? Like, I didn't know you did that. I mean, and people's hobbies, people's, ideas of what they do with their spare time is fascinating. And you continue to grow and change with them. But, you live vicariously, because Harvey's success, I consider our success, and if you give credit to people, and that's another thing most people don't do, is acknowledge people who made the difference in their life. And it could have been their grandparents, it could have been an uncle, but you let their legacy continue to grow and be relevant by sharing that and making them still live again through the things they might have taught you, and sharing what they shared with you is their share through you. And to your point, life is so uncertain. No one promises anybody tomorrow. You never know when you're going to see the person again, or if that person's going to be seeable. So how do you leave everybody? With appreciation, with gratitude. I met this one lady who had an amazing story. I was at this conference, and it was a big conference, and she was a speaker. Did a wonderful presentation. And mostly people line up afterwards to either say something, ask a question. So I waited, and I said to her, I said, what was the turning point in your life that allowed you to be who you became? And she shared, says, I quit school in 11th grade, got married when I was 17, had a couple kids, and was in a really bad situation. My husband wasn't supportive at all. And what turned the tide is I said to him, I said, Jim, I need $20. And he said, what are you going to do with it? And once I heard that, it was like the whole world changed. And I said, well, if I got to ask you or tell you what I'm doing with $20, I don't want to ask you ever again. And she said, I went back to school, got my degree, and got divorced, and continued to invest in myself. And now I became this corporate leader. And it would have never happened except for that one time when he didn't even know what he was talking about. But I was in a position to hear him for what it meant. And it changed my whole life. And so there is a reckoning. There's a point where people get sick and tired of being sick and tired. And they say, this is the day I'm going to make a difference. And they carry that to sometimes when you drop so low, when you bounce back, you go way beyond where you were before you went to low.
Right.
You just keep climbing. So with that said, top of the hour, so grateful to have you today, Jason. You really made for a great show. And I want to thank the audience. It was very, very supportive, knowing that our word was support. But it's not an audience anymore. It's like a family. It's like old friends that show up when they can. and you have a background with them, like Christine, like Dennis, like Harvey, like Carl, because these are no longer strangers. And I believe you need to surround yourself with the people who support you, because those are the ones who will continue to be there for you and support you, not the people who show up, hey, I want to share everything I know, never see again, never care about the audience. That's not who this is or what this show's about. And I think everybody starts to learn, because one thing I'll say about Harvey and Kelle, they all took one thing special from the show, which was the format of putting the audience first, of putting their co-host next and putting themselves last and making it for a safe environment, because that's so key. So final thoughts and words, Jason?
Thank you to you, Don, for the support and all that you showed me, and all that I learned from you and this whole community that, you know, shows up for a year or 2 years. It's just amazing. And thank you all for putting up with my tech.
Well, that was a great thank you, Jason. And I know how sincere it is. And, you know, people get beyond, like I say, the technical side, and they get to know the true worth and value of you. And I can attest, you're a stand-up guy who brings so much value. And that's why I continue to bring you back, is because I can learn from you, and so can the audience. Dennis comes back with legacy begins with legs, so remember to keep your leg up on your way up. Dennis is such a positive, optimistic guy. It makes me more positive and optimistic. So thank you too, Dennis. With that said, have a great day. Come back on Monday. Khan is here on Monday. Should be a great show. And if you ever need to, reach out to any of us, especially everybody on the screen.